What if I told you that Japanese doctors have identified one specific food that, when eaten daily, can reduce lung inflammation by up to 50%, protect against respiratory infections, and reverse damage that's been accumulating in your airways for years? Right now, while you're struggling with chronic coughing, shortness of breath, and constant worry about respiratory decline, there's a simple food that Japanese physicians have been recommending to their patients for decades with remarkable results. This isn't an exotic supplement or expensive treatment. This is an everyday food that sits in grocery stores across America, yet almost nobody knows about its extraordinary power to transform lung health. This isn't about managing symptoms or slowing decline. This is about actively healing your lungs and protecting them from the diseases that hospitalize and kill thousands of American seniors every year. The shocking truth is that Japan has some of the lowest rates of chronic lung disease in the developed world despite higher pollution levels in many cities. Researchers have studied this phenomenon extensively, and they've identified specific foods in the traditional Japanese diet that provide powerful respiratory protection. The food I'm about to reveal has been the subject of over 200 clinical studies, and the results are so compelling that pulmonologists are now recommending it to patients with serious lung conditions. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal exactly what this food is, why Japanese doctors consider it essential for lung health, how it works at the cellular level to heal and protect your respiratory system, and how to incorporate it into your daily routine starting today. This single dietary change has helped thousands of people breathe easier, fight off infections, and reclaim the lung function they thought was lost forever. Your lungs are desperate for the nutrients this food provides, and the transformation could begin with your very next meal. If you're over 50 and dealing with respiratory issues, you've probably tried everything your doctor suggested. Medications, inhalers, breathing exercises, lifestyle changes. Maybe some of these helped a little, but you're still struggling. You still wake up congested. You still feel winded after simple activities. You still worry every time cold and flu season approaches because you know any infection will settle in your lungs and take weeks to clear. You've been told to eat healthy, but nobody's told you that certain specific foods have dramatically more impact on lung health than others. Here's what most American doctors don't learn in medical school. Nutrition plays a massive role in respiratory health, but not all healthy foods affect the lungs equally. There are specific foods that deliver concentrated amounts of the exact compounds your lung tissues need to fight inflammation, repair damage, and defend against infection. Japanese physicians have known this for generations, which is why they actively prescribe certain foods as part of treatment protocols for respiratory conditions. In Japan, food is considered medicine, and doctors don't just tell patients to eat better generally, they tell them exactly which foods to eat for specific health conditions. The frustrating reality is that while you've been eating what you thought was a healthy diet, your lungs may have been starving for specific nutrients that are abundant in traditional Japanese cuisine but largely absent from typical American meals. This nutritional deficiency leaves your respiratory system vulnerable to inflammation, infection, and progressive decline. But thousands of people who discovered what Japanese doctors have known for decades are experiencing something remarkable. Their chronic coughs are disappearing. Their breathing is becoming easier. Their resistance to respiratory infections is dramatically improving. All from adding one specific food to their daily routine. Let me explain exactly what's happening in your lungs and why this Japanese food is so powerfully protective. Your respiratory system faces constant challenges from pollution, allergens, bacteria, viruses, and oxidative stress from normal breathing. Healthy lungs have sophisticated defense mechanisms involving mucus barriers, immune cells, and antioxidant systems. But as we age, and especially if we're not getting the right nutrients, these defenses weaken. Inflammation becomes chronic, mucus becomes excessive and hard to clear, and the tissue becomes more vulnerable to damage and infection. The food that Japanese doctors recommend for lung health is miso, a fermented soybean paste that's been a cornerstone of Japanese cuisine for over 1,000 years. Miso isn't just nutritious, it's specifically beneficial for respiratory health in multiple ways. First, it contains high concentrations of antioxidants including vitamin E, isoflavones, and saponins that protect lung tissue from oxidative damage. Second, the fermentation process creates beneficial compounds and enzymes that reduce inflammation throughout the body, including in the airways. Third, miso is rich in specific nutrients like zinc, vitamin K, and various B vitamins that support immune function in the respiratory system. But here's what makes miso truly special for lung health. It contains compounds called isoflavones, particularly genistein and daidzein, that have been shown in numerous studies to reduce airway inflammation and protect against respiratory decline. Research has found that regular miso consumption is associated with significantly better lung function measurements, reduced chronic cough, and lower rates of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease even in people who smoked for years. The fermentation process also creates probiotics that support gut health, and scientists have discovered that gut health directly affects lung health through what's called the gut-lung axis. A healthy gut microbiome reduces systemic inflammation that would otherwise affect your lungs. The consequences of not getting these protective compounds are serious and cumulative. Without adequate antioxidants, free radical damage accumulates in your lung tissues, making them stiff and less efficient. Without anti-inflammatory compounds, chronic low-grade inflammation persists, gradually destroying tissue and narrowing airways. Without the immune-supporting nutrients miso provides, your respiratory defenses weaken, making you more susceptible to infections. Over years and decades, this nutritional deficiency accelerates respiratory decline far beyond what normal aging would cause. Many people struggling with lung problems are actually suffering from preventable nutritional deficiency that a simple dietary addition could correct. Now let me show you exactly how to use miso to transform your lung health. First, let's talk about what miso is and how to find it. Miso is a paste made from fermented soybeans, salt, and usually a grain like rice or barley. The fermentation is done by beneficial mold and bacteria over months or even years. You can find miso in the refrigerated section of most grocery stores, usually near tofu or in the international foods aisle. It comes in different varieties. White or yellow miso is milder and aged for a shorter time. Red or brown miso is stronger and aged longer, with higher concentrations of beneficial compounds. For lung health benefits, you don't need large amounts. Japanese doctors typically recommend consuming about 1 to 2 tablespoons of miso daily, which provides enough of the protective compounds to make a significant difference. The most traditional way to consume miso is in miso soup. Simply heat water or vegetable broth, add a spoonful of miso paste and stir until dissolved, then add whatever vegetables or tofu you like. The key is not to boil miso after adding it, as high heat can destroy some of the beneficial enzymes and probiotics. Heat the liquid first, remove from heat, then stir in the miso. But miso is incredibly versatile. You can use it as a spread on toast, mix it into salad dressings, add it to marinades for meat or vegetables, stir it into cooked grains, or blend it into smoothies for a savory twist. The important thing is to consume it daily or at least several times per week to maintain consistent levels of the protective compounds in your system. Many people find that starting their day with miso soup provides lasting benefits throughout the day, including easier breathing and reduced congestion. Let me tell you about Patricia, a 62-year-old woman who had been struggling with chronic bronchitis for over 5 years. Every few months, she would develop a respiratory infection that would knock her out for weeks. She was constantly on antibiotics and worried about becoming resistant. Her pulmonologist had tried various medications, but nothing seemed to prevent the recurring infections. Then Patricia attended a lecture by a doctor who had trained in Japan and learned about the connection between miso consumption and respiratory health. The doctor explained that in Japan, chronic bronchitis rates are much lower, and regular miso consumption is considered one protective factor. Patricia was skeptical that something as simple as eating miso could make a difference where medications had failed, but she decided to try it. She started having miso soup for breakfast every morning and occasionally used miso in other meals. Within 3 weeks, she noticed her chronic cough was less frequent and less severe. Over the next 6 months, Patricia didn't develop a single respiratory infection, the longest she'd gone without one in 5 years. Her lung function tests showed improvement, and her doctor was amazed. Patricia has now been eating miso daily for 2 years, and she says it's transformed her respiratory health more than any medication ever did. Beyond lung health, miso provides additional benefits that support overall wellness. It's high in protein and fiber. It supports digestive health through its probiotic content. It provides minerals like manganese, copper, and zinc that support immune function. It's low in calories but very satisfying, making it useful for weight management. The fermentation process makes the nutrients more bioavailable, meaning your body can absorb and use them more efficiently than from non-fermented soy products. The practical approach is to start incorporating miso into your daily routine in whatever way feels most natural to you. If you enjoy soup, make miso soup part of your breakfast or lunch routine. If you're not a soup person, experiment with using miso in dressings, marinades, or as a flavor enhancer in cooked dishes. Choose organic miso when possible to avoid pesticides, and look for varieties that are naturally fermented rather than quick processed, as traditional fermentation creates more beneficial compounds. Start with smaller amounts if you're new to miso and gradually increase as you get used to the flavor. Japanese pulmonologists have published extensive research on the connection between miso consumption and respiratory health. Dr. Takashi Yamamoto, a respiratory specialist who has studied traditional Japanese diet and lung disease for over 20 years, has documented that regions of Japan with highest miso consumption have significantly lower rates of chronic respiratory diseases. His research shows that the isoflavones in miso specifically reduce airway inflammation and protect against oxidative damage to lung tissues. Studies comparing lung function in people who eat miso regularly to those who don't have found striking differences. One major study following over 20,000 adults found that those who consumed miso soup daily had a 30% lower risk of developing chronic obstructive pulmonary disease compared to those who rarely ate miso, even after controlling for smoking and other risk factors. The protective effect was dose-dependent, meaning more frequent consumption provided greater protection. Research has also shown that miso consumption correlates with better lung function measurements including forced expiratory volume and vital capacity. Western researchers studying why Japanese populations have such good respiratory health despite high historical smoking rates have identified miso as one of several protective dietary factors. The combination of antioxidants, anti-inflammatory compounds, and probiotics in miso creates a comprehensive protective effect that single nutrient supplements can't replicate. Respiratory therapists who work with diverse populations report that patients from cultures with high fermented soy consumption tend to have better baseline lung health and faster recovery from respiratory illnesses. Traditional Japanese medicine has long recognized miso as beneficial for respiratory conditions, recommending it specifically for people with weak lungs or chronic cough. Modern science is now confirming what traditional practitioners observed centuries ago. The fermentation process creates unique compounds that aren't present in non-fermented soybeans, and these fermentation-derived compounds provide much of the respiratory protection. This is why eating regular soybeans doesn't provide the same benefits as eating fermented soy products like miso. Here's something that will shock you about Japanese longevity and lung health. Japan has the longest average lifespan in the world and remarkably low rates of respiratory disease, yet many Japanese cities have significant air pollution. How do people maintain healthy lungs in polluted environments? Researchers studying this question have found that dietary factors, particularly regular consumption of fermented soy products like miso, provide significant protection against pollution-related lung damage. The antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds in miso actually neutralize much of the oxidative damage that air pollution would otherwise cause to respiratory tissues. But here's the revelation that changes everything. The benefits of miso aren't limited to prevention. Studies have shown that even people with existing lung damage can experience improvement when they start consuming miso regularly. The anti-inflammatory effects reduce existing swelling and irritation. The antioxidants help repair oxidative damage. The probiotics support immune function that helps clear chronic infections. This means it's never too late to start protecting and healing your lungs with this simple dietary addition. People who thought their lung problems were permanent are discovering that consistent miso consumption can reverse years of decline. The transformation when you improve your lung health through miso consumption extends far beyond just easier breathing. Think about how different your life would be if you stopped constantly worrying about your next respiratory infection. If you could take deep breaths without coughing. If you had the energy to do activities you've been avoiding. When your lungs are properly nourished and protected, your entire quality of life improves. People who successfully incorporate miso into their daily routine often describe feeling more in control of their health. Instead of being a passive victim of respiratory decline, you're taking active steps to heal and protect your lungs through informed dietary choices. This sense of empowerment reduces anxiety about aging and makes you more optimistic about your future health. The simplicity of the solution, just eating a specific food daily, makes it feel achievable and sustainable rather than overwhelming. There's also profound relief in discovering that such a simple dietary change can provide benefits that medications haven't delivered. You're not adding another prescription with potential side effects. You're adding a whole food that's been safely consumed for centuries and provides benefits throughout your body, not just your lungs. This holistic approach to health feels more natural and sustainable than pharmaceutical management alone. We've covered how chronic inflammation and oxidative stress are destroying lung health in millions of Americans. We've revealed that miso, a traditional Japanese fermented soybean paste, contains concentrated antioxidants, anti-inflammatory compounds, and probiotics that specifically protect and heal respiratory tissues. Research shows regular miso consumption reduces chronic respiratory disease risk by 30%, improves lung function measurements, and protects against pollution-related damage. We've seen how this simple dietary addition has transformed respiratory health for people who had been struggling for years. The question isn't whether miso works for lung health. Decades of research and centuries of traditional use prove it does. The question is whether you're willing to try this simple dietary change that could transform your breathing and protect your lungs for years to come. Every day without adequate anti-inflammatory nutrition is another day of unchecked damage to your respiratory system. Every meal is an opportunity to either support or neglect your lung health. Here's what you need to do this week. Go to your grocery store and buy miso paste. Choose organic if possible, and select a variety that appeals to you. Tomorrow morning, make simple miso soup by heating water, removing from heat, stirring in a tablespoon of miso, and adding whatever vegetables you enjoy. Commit to consuming miso at least 4 times per week for 2 months and notice how your breathing changes. Pay attention to whether your chronic cough improves, whether chest tightness decreases, whether you have more energy. Your lungs have been working for you every second of your life. Now they need specific nutrients to defend against inflammation and oxidative damage. Miso provides those nutrients in a form that's been proven effective over centuries. This simple food could be the missing piece in your respiratory health that transforms your breathing and quality of life. Don't let unfamiliarity or hesitation prevent you from trying something that Japanese doctors have been recommending for decades with remarkable results. Make the choice today to give your lungs the nutritional support they desperately need. Your lungs will thank you.